Hi, fifth graders. Today we're going to talk about a special kind of decimal word problem, and that is going to be related to money. Many of the decimal story problems that you are going to see will have to do with money. And there are some important vocabulary terms that will be really important for us to know so that we understand what steps we need to take and whether we should add or subtract. So there's some different terms that often tell us we need to add in a story problem. The first is if we're making a deposit. So if you've ever gone to the bank with an adult at home and made a deposit, that means you put money into your account. When you put money into your account, you added that money and your bank account got larger. So making a deposit adds money to a story problem. You also could have to add if you're trying to find the total cost of something. A lot of times you'll see that you need to add together more than one purchase to find your total cost. This is an addition signal. Same thing with admission or ticket prices. A lot of times in decimal story problems, you'll need to add together more than one ticket price to find out how much it's going to cost to get into an event or a sporting game, something like that. So those are some terms that often signal addition. Now, we also might have to subtract in a money story problem. One term that you might see to signal subtraction is writing a check. So if an adult at home writes a check, that means usually they're paying a bill or paying someone else money. Their bank account is getting less because you're giving away money to someone else. So writing a check is a signal to subtract. You might also see subtraction if you're working with coupons. So coupons means that the price of an object becomes less because you subtracted whatever amount the coupon was for. Finally, if you get change from something, that also tells you you need to subtract because it means you paid the cashier more than the item actually cost. So they need to subtract the actual price away from whatever you gave them in order to figure out how much change you would get. Whether we're adding or subtracting, we might also see one new keyword called the balance. And the balance is the sum or the difference that we're dealing with when we're trying to figure out how much money we have left. So let's take a look at an example and see how we can figure this out using some of these new vocabulary terms. The example reads, at the end of August, Mr. Diaz had a balance of $441.62. Since then, he has written two checks for $157.34 and $19.74 and made a deposit of $575. Mr. Diaz says his balance is $739.45. Is he correct? Prove your thinking. Okay, so I can totally relate to this because every month I make sure that my checkbook is up to date. So when I pay my bills, I make sure that I subtracted the right amount after I wrote the checks. And when I get paid from my job, I make sure that I added the right amount when I wrote in the paycheck that I got. So I can relate to what Mr. Diaz is doing here. I can picture him sitting down at his kitchen table and doing the math to make sure that all of his accounts have the right amount of money in them. So now let's go line by line and see if we can find the math information that's going to be helpful in order to solve this problem and see if he's correct. The first sentence reads, at the end of August, Mr. Diaz had a balance of $441.62. Well, right away I see that new word balance, and I see that it relates to the amount $441.62. I can't do anything with that number yet, but I'm going to keep it in the back of my mind because I know it's going to be important in order to help me solve. Now the next sentence is quite long, so I broke it up into two different parts. The first part reads, since then he has written two checks for $157.34 and $19.74. Now I remember that writing a check often signals subtraction. And in this case, he wrote two checks. The first check was $157.34, and the second check was $19.74. That means when I solve, I'm going to have to do something that will allow me to subtract both of those amounts. Then the rest of that sentence says, he also made a deposit of $575. Well, I remember that word deposit means I'm going to be adding money into the account. So this part of the sentence tells me that Mr. Diaz is also going to add $575 to his account. The next sentence reads, Mr. Diaz says his balance is $739.45. Again, I see that word balance. So this tells me when he went through and added and subtracted all of the information for the month of August, he thinks he has $739.45 in his account. So the question sentence says, is he correct? Prove your thinking. So I know I'll be checking Mr. Diaz's work in order to see if he actually has $739.45. Now, before I walk you through one possible way to solve this problem, I want to point out that there are a lot of different ways you could approach this story problem. And any strategy that works for you, as long as you end up with the same final answer, is totally fine with me. I'm going to show you what's been the most popular strategy for fifth graders to solve this problem in the past. And the first step for that strategy is to combine the checks. Now you might be thinking, but wait, writing a check means to subtract. We are eventually going to subtract this amount, but most fifth graders tell me that they would rather add together both of the checks and then subtract that amount once instead of doing two separate subtraction problems. If you'd rather do two separate subtraction problems, that's totally fine. But if you are somebody who's thinking, yeah, I'd rather add once and subtract once instead, then this may be the strategy you want to use. So combining the checks means I'm going to add together $157.34 and $19.74. That means altogether, both of the checks Mr. Diaz wrote were going to cost him $177.08. Now, in the second step, I'm going to subtract this amount from the starting balance. So now I'll take the $441.62 and I'll subtract $177.08 because that's how much both of the checks were altogether. That leaves me with a balance of $264.54. So that's used the green and the blue lines, but I can't forget that the pink part told me he also made a deposit of $575. Making a deposit is adding money. So I'll take that $264.54 and add the deposit of $575. That gives me a total of $839.54. So now I can compare that to the amount in the purple sentence. Mr. Diaz thought his balance was $739.45, but it's actually $839.54. So I can say that Mr. Diaz is not correct and his balance is actually higher, which is a good thing for Mr. Diaz. So hopefully this gives you a little more background of some of the financial or the money vocabulary that you might see. When you're doing the math, don't forget to line up those decimal points, and any strategy that you use is totally fine as long as you make sure to be adding when you're making a deposit and subtracting when you're writing a check. I hope this helped break down some of the new financial vocabulary. Thanks for watching. We'll do lots more of these together, and I hope you all have a great day.